I never thought a single sound could change my life. But that morning, it did. I was standing in the kitchen, half awake, waiting for the coffee machine to finish its slow drip, when I heard it, a sharp envelope hitting the floor by the front door. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. Just a simple little tap on the hardwood. But for some reason, it caught my attention. Maybe it was the timing. Maybe it was the silence in the house. Or maybe, deep down, something in me already knew that this wasn't just ordinary mail. I walked over, picked it up, and instantly felt a strange chill. The handwriting wasn't familiar. Smooth cursive, the kind of handwriting someone practices. And the envelope, it carried a faint scent. Not perfume. Not laundry detergent. Cologne. A scent I didn't recognize. My first thought was confusion. Who sends my wife a handwritten letter in 2025? Bills don't smell like cologne. Work letters don't arrive without a return address. I turned the envelope over once, twice. No signature. No clue. Just my wife's name written in a way I had never seen before. Something inside me whispered, open it. Another part of me whispered, don't. But curiosity, and maybe fear, won. I tore the envelope open gently and pulled out a single folded sheet of paper. The moment I saw the first line, my whole body went cold. Rena, it began. Last night meant more to me than I expected. I froze. My eyes scanned faster than my brain could keep up. And then, right there, in the middle of the page. The sentence that knocked the air out of my chest, I know you said he's replaceable, replaceable. Me. Her husband of 8 years. I stared at those words until they blurred. It felt like someone had reached inside my chest and crushed something I didn't even know was fragile. I wanted to stop reading, but I couldn't. The letter went on, soft words, hopeful words, the kind of words you don't send a married woman unless you believe she's yours somehow. And he talked about their plans. Their next meeting. Their future. All while my coffee machine hummed in the background like nothing had happened. For a moment, I just stood there. Letter in hand. Heart sinking slowly. I wasn't angry yet. Anger needs clarity. And right then, all I had was shock. My wife had been distant for months. Cold. Distracted. But I thought it was stress. I thought it was her new job. I thought it was me being overly sensitive. But now it all made sense in a way I didn't want it to. She didn't drift away by accident. She didn't pull back because life got busy. She stepped away because she was stepping towards someone else. Someone who believed he had the right to write her letters that smelled like his cologne. Someone bold enough to remind her of the words she said behind my back. He's replaceable. It echoed in my head like someone whispering directly in my ear. And the pain, it was sharp, but quiet. A kind of hurt I couldn't explain with words. Like the ground under me had shifted, but I was still standing in the same place. I folded the letter. Slowly. Carefully. Almost like it might break if I touched it wrong. But something inside me changed the moment I set it on the kitchen counter. The heartbreak was real. The confusion was real. But something else rose with it, something steady, something I didn't expect, determination. If she really believed I was replaceable. If she really saw me as someone she could walk away from without a second thought. Then I needed to know the full truth. Not just pieces. Not just clues. The whole truth. And I made myself a quiet promise right there, in that silent kitchen, would uncover everything she tried to hide. I would reclaim my dignity. And she would learn that I was never the one who was replaceable. This letter was only the beginning. If you had asked me a year before all this happened, I would have told you my marriage was solid. Not perfect, not flawless, but steady, like a house that had survived every season and still stood strong. My name is Aaron, I'm 38 years old, and I work as an IT consultant in Chicago. I'm not the loudest guy in the room. I'm not flashy or dramatic. But I always believed in showing up, being loyal, being present. For most of our 8 years together, my wife Rena said that's what she loved about me. And for a long time, things really were good. We had our Saturday morning routines, breakfast at the same little diner on the corner. We had our jokes, our inside stories, our late-night talks about the future. I honestly thought we were building something strong. But looking back, the cracks didn't start big. They were small. Quiet. Easy to dismiss. At first, it was the way she stopped laughing at my jokes, not every time, just often enough for me to notice. Then it was the way she answered questions with short replies, like she was mentally somewhere else. And then there was her phone. It used to sit charging on the kitchen counter. She never cared who picked it up or who saw her messages. But suddenly, it lived in her hands or stayed face down, even when she wasn't using it. I'd ask, "Everything okay?" She'd smile, but it wasn't the warm smile I knew. More like a polite one she'd give a stranger. "Just tired," she'd say. But tired doesn't make someone hide their screen every time you walk by. And then came the late nights. At first, she said it was seasonal, her office was short-staffed, big project, extra responsibilities. It sounded reasonable. I wanted to be supportive, so I didn't question it. But, a few late nights turned into almost every night. Work ran long. Meetings popped up out of nowhere. Traffic was bad. She'd come home hours after she said she would, distracted and distant like her mind was still somewhere else. Still. I tried to believe her. I tried to give her space. I told myself it was just a busy phase. Then everything changed when she landed her dream job. It was a position she had chased for years, operations coordinator for a growing company in downtown Chicago. She came home glowing that day, and I was genuinely proud of her. I hugged her. Celebrated with her. Told her she deserved it. But the celebration didn't last long. Almost immediately, her whole world shifted. New hours. New coworkers. New networking dinners that seemed to appear out of thin air. New last-minute trips she never mentioned until she was out the door. She stopped waiting for me to eat dinner. Stopped checking in. Stopped asking about my day. It was like she'd turned a switch off, and forgotten to turn it back on. One evening stands out the most. She came home late, again, dropped her bag on the counter, and walked straight past me like I wasn't even there. I tried to lighten the mood, tried to joke the way I used to. I said, "Hey, careful, you're starting to act like you don't need me around anymore." It was meant to be playful. A small attempt to pull her back toward me. But she didn't laugh. Didn't smile. Didn't even soften. She just looked at me with this tired, almost annoyed expression and said, "Everyone is replaceable, Aaron. That's life." She walked away right after saying it. No explanation. No warmth. Just those cold words left floating in the air between us. I remember standing there in the kitchen, feeling something I couldn't explain. Like a small part of me had cracked. Not because of the words themselves. But because of the way she said them. Detached. Careless. As if I wasn't her husband, but just another person taking up space. That night, I lay awake wondering when exactly things had shifted. When the warmth had faded. When the distance became the new normal. The seeds of doubt were planted that night. And even though I didn't know it then, those seeds were growing fast. Faster than I could stop them. Faster than I could understand them. And soon, they would show me a truth I never expected. I wish I could say I stopped reading after the first painful line. I wish I could say I had the strength to fold that letter and walk away. But once I saw the name, Thomas, something inside me pushed forward, even though every word felt like it cut deeper. The handwriting was neat, almost gentle. It felt strange reading something written with so much care, when the message itself was tearing my world apart. The letter began with, "Rena, last night stayed on my mind longer than I expected." My stomach flipped. Last night? She told me she was stuck at a late office meeting. She even texted me at 9 p.m. saying she'd be home soon. But here, in this letter, someone else was saying he spent that night with her. I kept reading. "I know you said he's replaceable," those words again. Sharp. Cold. Final. My eyes stayed stuck on that line like they refused to move forward. I must have read it 10 times. I could almost hear her voice saying it, without emotion, without care, like it was just a simple truth she'd already accepted. Replaceable. Me. Her husband. I didn't realize it, but my hands were shaking. Still, I forced myself to keep going, as if the full truth might somehow hurt less than the pieces I'd already seen. "I just want you to be sure," he wrote. "If you're ready to leave, say the word. I don't want to push you, but I need honesty between us." Leave? Honesty between them? My heart sank deeper. Their relationship wasn't a slip, or a brief moment of weakness. He was talking like they'd been building something real, something planned. The next line made my chest tighten. "I'm ready to make space for you, but only if you're ready to choose." Space for her. Choose. A future. This wasn't an emotional misunderstanding. This wasn't a one-time mistake. This was a path she had been walking quietly, step by step, while I was still trying to figure out why she stopped hugging me at night. The worst part? His tone was gentle. Hopeful. Like he cared about her. Meanwhile, I was standing alone in my kitchen with a letter that smelled like cologne and betrayal. He mentioned the restaurant they met at, one she told me she didn't like anymore. He mentioned the way she laughed that night, something she hadn't done with me in months. He mentioned the moment they shared outside the hotel. That word hit me like a punch I couldn't defend against. I took a slow breath, but it didn't help. Then came the final line, "Tell me when you're ready. I'll be here. Always. Always." The kind of word two people use when they're planning something long-term. I set the letter down on the counter. But the room didn't feel like my kitchen anymore. It felt like someone had pulled the floor from beneath me, and I was still standing purely out of habit. I felt shock first, pure, heavy shock. Like my brain couldn't process what my eyes were reading. Then sadness settled in. A deep, quiet sadness that sat in my chest like a weight. Not just sadness about her actions. But sadness about who we used to be. What we used to share. What we lost long before I even realized anything had changed. And then, slowly, something else rose. Determination. Not anger, not yet. Anger can blind you. Anger can push you into mistakes. But determination, that's different. That's the moment you decide you won't be blindsided again. I knew right then I couldn't confront her. Not yet. Not without understanding the full truth. I didn't want yelling or excuses. I didn't want half-answers or rushed lies. I wanted to know exactly what happened, when it happened, and how deep it went. If I confronted her too early, she would shut down. She would twist the story. She would hide the rest. But now I knew enough to stay quiet and observe. The letter didn't just expose her betrayal. It revealed something even more important: she was living a life I never knew existed. And I was going to uncover every piece of it, on my terms. That was the moment I promised myself something. If she thought I was replaceable, she was about to learn how wrong she was. The hardest part wasn't reading the letter. The hardest part was waking up the next morning and pretending nothing happened. I sat beside Rena at breakfast with a calm face, even though the letter's words were repeating in my head like an echo I couldn't shut down. He's replaceable. That line stayed with me like a bruise I kept touching, even though it hurt every time. But I wasn't ready to confront her. Not yet. I needed answers, real ones. Not excuses. Not sudden explanations. Not tears that might confuse me. So I started quietly investigating the truth she thought she'd hidden. It began with the phone bill. She always thought I wasn't the sort of man who checked things like that, and honestly, I never had a reason to, until now. But there it was, plain as day, a number she called almost every night. Sometimes for 20 minutes. Sometimes for an hour. Sometimes late, way past the time she said she was finishing work. My heart sank as I dialed the number into a search bar. And that's when his name came up, Thomas Grant, Operations Director. Her company. Her boss. Seeing his face on LinkedIn made everything suddenly real. A smiling photo of a man wearing a suit, the kind of guy who looked like he always had everything under control. I stared at the screen for a long moment, wondering how long he'd been a part of her world, how long he'd been taking the place she once reserved for me. But I didn't stop there. I checked her bank statements, something I had never done before. And the receipts hit me one by one. Dinner for two at a place 40 minutes from her office. Another at a rooftop bar she once told me was too fancy for her taste. Uber trips to neighborhoods she had no reason to visit. Every line told a small story, a story I hadn't been invited into. A story she tried to paint as work dinners and team events. But that didn't match what I found next. Her calendar. She used to keep it visible on our shared computer. But lately, she switched to a private one. Still, she forgot one thing: the notifications synced to her email. I scanned through the last few months. So many events marked simply as meeting. But the locations didn't line up with anything she told me. There were lunches scheduled at the exact time she claimed she was too busy to text. There were planning sessions at a hotel lounge. Not a hotel room, just the lounge, but still. Why there? Why with him? The pattern was becoming clearer, but the final piece came unexpectedly. Her photos. I wasn't snooping through her phone, I couldn't, she had changed her password. But she synced some pictures to our shared cloud storage, and she seemed to forget that too. When I opened the folder, I felt my breath catch. There they were. Nothing inappropriate. Nothing explicit. Just moments. Photos of her sitting across from Thomas, leaning in close, smiling in a way I hadn't seen in months. Another of him touching her shoulder lightly as they laughed. A selfie she must have taken during one of their team dinners, and though he wasn't in the frame, the reflection in the window behind her showed him sitting right beside her. The pictures weren't shocking by themselves, they weren't the kind you confront someone with. But emotionally, they hit harder than anything else I'd found. Because they showed something I couldn't deny: she wasn't just hiding a fling. She was building a life with him. A life full of inside jokes, shared moments, quiet closeness. A life she didn't want me to see. I sat alone in our living room, staring at those photos, feeling something close to heartbreak and disbelief blend together into one heavy knot in my chest. It was the lowest moment I'd ever felt. Not because she had someone else. But because she had slowly replaced me without even telling me. I wasn't her partner anymore. I wasn't her confidant. I wasn't her friend. I was just the backup. The safety net. The man she returned home to because he wasn't ready to give her everything yet. And that realization, that quiet, painful truth. It shattered something inside me. But even in that heartbreak, I felt something else begin to form, a resolve. A steady, rising determination. If she had two lives, I was going to uncover every piece of both. And when I did, she would finally understand the weight of the choices she made. This wasn't the end. This was the turning point. When you discover the person you love has been living a secret life, your first instinct is to explode. Shout. Demand answers. Break down right in front of them. But the moment I realized how deep Rena's betrayal went, I felt something else instead. A calmness. A strange, steady calmness that told me, don't react. Plan. Move carefully. I knew that if I confronted her too early, she would twist everything. She would deny what she could, cover what she couldn't, and then act like I was overreacting. No. I couldn't give her that power. If she wanted to live two lives, then I was going to show her what it felt like when one of them slipped right through her fingers. So I made a decision, I would leave first. On my terms. Quietly. Smartly. And she would never see it coming. The first step was simple, open a separate bank account. I'd never hidden money from her before. We always kept things shared. But now I needed my own foundation. My own safety net. I opened the account during my lunch break, using a bank she didn't shop near, a branch she'd never walk into. I transferred a portion of my paycheck, enough to start building a new life, but not enough for her to notice anything missing. Next came the evidence. Every receipt. Every phone bill. Every calendar notification. Every email she forgot to log out of. Every picture that synced accidentally. I didn't do it out of spite. I did it to protect myself. People rewrite stories when they panic, and I wasn't about to let her rewrite mine. I saved everything neatly, organized in folders with dates and details, calm, careful, controlled. Then, without telling her, I met with a lawyer. It wasn't a dramatic moment. No big speech. Just me walking into a quiet office on a rainy Tuesday afternoon. The lawyer listened to my story with a calm expression. When I finished, he said something simple, "Aaron, you're handling this with more dignity than most people would." And I realized he was right. I wasn't creating chaos, I was preventing it. We talked through every option. What would happen to the house? What would happen to our accounts? How to keep the process clean. How to make sure I wasn't blindsided later. When I left his office, the rain had stopped. And so had the panic I had been living with since the letter arrived. Back at home, the strangest part began. I had to act normal. I had to smile lightly when she talked about her long week. I had to nod when she claimed her phone battery died again. I had to pretend her late-night messages to the team didn't sting. But something funny happened during those days. The more I stayed calm, the more off-balance she became. She expected the old me, the trusting, patient, predictable husband. But instead, she got someone harder to read. Someone who didn't ask where she was. Someone who didn't wait up. Someone who looked peaceful instead of anxious. And suddenly, she wasn't as confident. She would watch me quietly while she pretended to scroll through her phone. She asked if everything was okay, twice in 1 week, which she hadn't done in months. Her tone shifted, a tiny edge of nervousness behind her words. For once. She wasn't sure she had control. And that was the revenge she never saw coming. Because the truth was, she had been keeping me as a backup plan. She didn't want to choose him yet, she just wanted to know that if she ever did, I would still be here, waiting in the background. But I wasn't going to be her background. I wasn't going to stay in the shadows while she lived two lives in the light. So instead of yelling, I went quiet. Instead of breaking down, I gathered strength. Instead of fighting for her, I prepared to walk away. And every single day I played along, every day I let her believe she still had the upper hand. I reclaimed another piece of myself. I was no longer the replaceable one. I was the one making the choice she never expected. And soon, she would realize exactly what that meant. There are nights you never forget, nights where the air feels heavier, like the world knows something is about to break. For me, that night was a quiet Sunday evening with rain sliding down the windows like slow tears. The house felt colder than usual. Maybe it was just me. Maybe it was the truth sitting in my pocket, the letter, folded neatly, waiting for the moment everything would finally come into the light. Rena was on the couch, scrolling on her phone, the screen reflecting on her face. She didn't even look up when I walked in. "Long week ahead?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. She shrugged without meeting my eyes. "Yeah. Meetings. Late nights. You know how it is." Her answers had become so automatic, so rehearsed, like she'd been practicing how to sound distant without sounding suspicious. But after everything I already knew, her words only made the silence between us feel wider. For a moment, I almost backed out. Almost told myself, not tonight. Not yet. But then I remembered every late-night call, every lie about work dinners, every photo she didn't mean to save. I remembered that sentence from the letter, "He's replaceable." And just like that, the hesitation disappeared. I walked over and sat across from her. She finally looked up, surprised by how quiet I was. "What's wrong?" she asked. I reached into my pocket and placed the letter gently on the coffee table between us. "What's that?" she asked, her voice suddenly tight. "Why don't you read it?" I said. She grabbed it with a quick, nervous movement. The moment her eyes landed on the handwriting, her whole face changed. Her breath hitched. Her fingers trembled slightly. "Aaron, where did you get this?" "Go ahead," I said softly. "Read it." She tried to inhale, but the air caught in her throat as she reached the middle of the page. I watched her eyes fill with panic when she reached the line, "I know you said he's replaceable." She closed her eyes like she could block out the words, but they were already out there. Already exposed. This isn't," she stammered. But I stayed calm. Too calm for her comfort. "It's not what it looks like," she rushed out. "I can explain, Aaron. I swear, I can explain." I stood up slowly, walked to the kitchen counter, and picked up the folder I had prepared for weeks. Neat. Organized. Unshakable. I placed it next to the letter. "What is that?" she whispered. "Everything," I said. "Your dinners. Your call logs. Your trips. Your meetings. All of it." She flipped it open with shaking hands. Her eyes widened when she saw the receipts. The Uber trips. The photos. The schedules that didn't match the stories she'd told me. "Why did you do this?" she whispered, sounding almost hurt. "So I'd know the truth," I said. "All of it." Her face shifted from panic to confusion, and then to fear. Not fear of losing me, fear of losing control. "Aaron, please," she said, her voice cracking. I wasn't sure. I didn't choose him. I swear I didn't choose anyone." I nodded slowly. "I know," I said. "You didn't choose him." Relief washed over her face for a split second, until I added, "But you didn't choose me either." She froze. I took a slow breath. "I'm leaving, Rena." Her head jerked up. "Leaving?" "No, Aaron, wait. We can fix this. Please. I haven't chosen him. I haven't made any decisions." And that's when I said the words that had been burning in me since the moment I read that letter. "That's the problem," I said quietly. "You wanted options." She reached for my arm, but I stepped back. "Aaron, please don't go. I made a mistake." I didn't mean, but her words just felt empty now, like echoes bouncing off walls that no longer belonged to us. I grabbed my bag, the one I had packed 2 days before. The rain outside had grown heavier, but somehow, walking out into it felt easier than staying inside that house one more second. I walked to the door. "Aaron, don't do this," she said behind me, her voice breaking. But I didn't look back. Not out of anger. Not out of spite. But because I was done. Truly, finally done. And the door closed behind me with a softness that somehow felt louder than any scream. I didn't know what freedom felt like until the night I walked out of that house. Not the loud kind of freedom you celebrate with shouts and music, no. Mine was quiet. Soft. Almost strange at first. The rain soaked through my jacket as I stepped outside, but somehow it felt like the world was washing something off me, 8 years of weight I didn't realize I'd been carrying. The next morning, I moved into a small apartment on the north side of Chicago. Nothing fancy. 1 bedroom. A tiny balcony. Old wooden floors that creaked with every step. But for the first time in a long time, the space felt like mine. No secrets in the walls. No lies hiding in the corners. Just silence and a chance to breathe again. At first, the quiet was overwhelming. I didn't know what to do when I didn't have to wait for someone to come home, or guess what mood they'd be in, or wonder if their late night was really work. But then something surprising happened. The quiet became peaceful. I woke up early because I wanted to, not because I was stressed. I made breakfast without rushing. I took slow walks to clear my head. I sat on the balcony at night, listening to the city instead of arguments or excuses. I started reconnecting with old friends, people I had drifted away from because I spent years trying to keep my marriage from falling apart. They'd say things like, "Man, you look different, lighter." And they were right. I didn't realize how much of myself I'd been giving up to keep someone else happy, someone who had stopped caring long before I even noticed. I picked up the hobbies I abandoned too. Woodworking. Hiking. Late-night drives with the windows down, letting the cold wind remind me that I was still alive, still moving forward. I even found myself smiling at small things again. Good coffee. A decent sunrise. A quiet evening with a book. It was strange, the kind of healing that didn't come from a big moment, but from many small ones. And then there was the divorce. It went smoother than I expected. No dramatic scenes. No long fights. No shouting or accusations. My lawyer said it was one of the cleanest cases he'd seen in a while. Rena didn't push back on anything. Maybe because she felt guilty. Maybe because she knew the evidence was too strong. Or maybe she finally realized I wasn't coming back. She tried to reach out a few times, messages, missed calls, long texts where she talked about mistakes and confusion and wanting to talk. But I never responded. Not because I hated her. Hate requires energy, and I wasn't giving her any more of mine. I was done. Truly done. Months passed, and life slowly fit back together like a puzzle I thought was lost. Then one day, during lunch with a mutual friend, I learned something that hit harder than I expected. Thomas, the man she gambled our marriage for. The man she thought had all the answers. He never committed to her. Not even after I left. Our friend said, "I heard he told her he wasn't ready for anything serious." Guess she expected more. The irony was almost unreal. She treated me like a backup. She treated him like a future. But in the end, she was the one who ended up alone. Her secret world collapsed before it even began. She thought she had unlimited choices. She thought she could keep 2 lives going until she decided which one felt right. She thought I would always be there, waiting in the background. But people aren't furniture. You don't get to set them aside and come back when you feel ready. And the thing that gets me the most is this, just like she once called me replaceable. Thomas ended up treating her the same way. Life has a strange way of showing you the truth. A strange way of bringing balance to things you thought were unfair. As for me, I didn't feel victorious. I didn't celebrate. I just felt free. And in that freedom, I found something better than revenge, a new version of myself, stronger, clearer, and finally at peace. Some endings feel like they're meant to destroy you. But looking back now, I realize mine was meant to free me. For a long time, I carried the weight of what happened like a quiet storm inside me. The letter, the secrets, the lies, they replayed in my mind over and over again, like a movie stuck on the same painful scene. But with every passing month, something inside me began to shift. Slowly. Quietly. Almost without me noticing. And one day, I realized I wasn't replaying the pain anymore. I was learning from it. I started seeing the betrayal not as the moment my life fell apart, but as the moment my life finally told me the truth I had been avoiding. And the truth was this: you are never replaceable to the right person. I know that sounds simple. But when someone treats you like an option, it's easy to forget your own value. It's easy to believe that you're not enough, or that you somehow caused their distance, or that if you try harder, you can fix what they broke. But that's not how love works. Not real love. Someone who truly values you doesn't make you guess your worth. They don't keep you waiting in the background. They don't live two lives while expecting you to stay in place, just in case their other plans don't work out. I spent years trying to hold on to a version of our marriage that existed only in my head, not in reality. I ignored the distance, the excuses, the coldness, because I wanted to believe we were still the couple we were in the beginning. But the biggest lesson I learned is this: emotional neglect is a form of betrayal too. You don't need someone to shout or slam doors or leave dramatic clues to feel broken. Sometimes the quietest betrayals hurt the most: the silence, the avoidance, the feeling of not being seen. It took the letter to finally show me how long she had been slipping away, how long she had been choosing everything except me. And here's the truth most people don't talk about: peace doesn't come from getting answers. Peace comes from deciding you deserve better than the questions. When I walked out that night, I didn't have all the closure I wanted. But I had enough truth to understand something important: staying would have destroyed me. Leaving is what saved me. And if anyone listening to this has ever felt overlooked, unappreciated, or treated like a second option, I want you to hear this clearly: you deserve to be chosen, fully, freely, and without hesitation. Someone who values you won't make you fight for scraps of attention. They won't hide you. They won't give their best self to someone else while expecting you to settle for the leftovers. You deserve someone who shows up for you. Someone who gives you the same energy you give them. Someone who makes you feel like you matter, not sometimes, not halfway, but always. And sometimes, the hardest thing you can do is walk away from someone you still love. But it's also the most powerful thing you can do for yourself. Walking away doesn't mean you lost. Walking away means you finally chose yourself. And once I did that, my life didn't fall apart. It opened up. I found peace. I found clarity. I found a version of myself I didn't know still existed. A version that laughs again. Sleeps again. Feels light again. So if you're holding on to someone who doesn't hold on to you, let this be your sign: you are worth more than being someone's backup plan. You are worth real love. Real effort. Real commitment. And the moment you recognize your own value, the moment you stop chasing someone who doesn't see it, your whole world will start to change. Mine did. And it all began with the letter I thought would destroy me. But that letter, that painful, unexpected letter, it wasn't the end. It was the beginning of my freedom. If this story touched something in you, don't leave just yet. Hit subscribe for more stories of truth, justice, and finding your strength again. Tap like if you felt that moment of freedom at the end, and tell me in the comments what part hit you the hardest. Remember, you're never replaceable to the right person.